Hi. Okay, this is a weird idea. I'm recording a review of the Inland Empire Remaster, which I saw last night, and I'm recording it on my walk to work. So I'm a little busy right now, so I don't really have time to sit down for a proper recording sesh. So I'm just kind of double tasking while I walk, and just recording my thoughts on the remaster, which I saw last night. I'm also out in public, so people will see me talking to myself. Whatever, no big deal. I wanted to say a few words about the value of the remaster. There's definitely trade-offs, I would say. I would say that the grainy, the video color palette and the grainy video quality of the original is part of the artistic statement of that movie. And so in my mind, the original and the remaster will always be two slightly different works. I don't take it that this remaster is the authoritative kind of like director's cut or improved edition of the original. I think it's a new, different work that has different things going for it. Because you'll never beat that lo-fi, the feeling and the energetic profile you get from that lo-fi production value of the original. That said, it did look very beautiful. It's amazing what they can do with this AI and how much detail they're able to restore or bring out, or kind of, I think in the case of some of these AI remastering techniques, they're actually putting on, they're kind of doing like the skin textures and stuff like that. Well, they're using textures from a kind of a bank of some kind. So it's not everything that was there in the original. It's actually external things being grafted on, but it's done so well and it looks so good. It really does look like it was shot in beautiful HD. And then the best thing about the remaster and the experience of seeing it in a theater was what they did to the sound. So the sound profile, they're able to clean up all of the grunge in the soundtrack, and they're able to greatly boost the dynamic range. So the louds are louder, the quiets are quieter, the jump scares are more effective. There's a couple jump scares that definitely made everybody in the theater jump. I'm thinking about the jump scare after Nikki shoots the Phantom. Everybody in the whole theater flinched at that, and it was very fun as a social experience. A theater full of people flinching is a bit more fun than just flinching by yourself at home watching it on your TV or computer. And also seeing it socially in the theater, you get much more sense of the humor in the movie. There was definitely parts and lines that got a laugh, including not just parts that were purposefully funny. I mean, like the Bucky J scene was getting laughs, and some of the more funnier, Lynchy funny lines were getting laughs, but also some of the parts where it was just like, I don't know, he was kind of being experimental and silly, and maybe some of these things that perhaps he thought read as scary or whatever else kind of got a little laugh too, just because the goofiness and silliness of his of his approach. So yeah, that part was very fun. Here's a few things that jumped out at me watching it again last night. This will be my third or fourth time watching Inland Empire. This was my fourth time watching Inland Empire. But of course, my first and only time seeing the remaster. I saw it in a theater. I went to this cool little art theater here in the city. They did it right. Before the beginning of the movie, they were playing these David-Lynch.com shorts. They played the Crazy Clown Time music video. I went with a friend who is not such a die-hard Lynch fan, but he's open-minded, and he told me he liked Blue Velvet and Mulholland Drive. So he was an okay candidate to bring along. The Crazy Clown Time music video definitely made him like he didn't enjoy it. He was like, it's almost, in his words, it's a competition to see which is worse, the song or the video. Of course, I don't think that. I'm just down for the Lynch, whatever he's fucking doing in that music video. But I can totally see where my friend Max is coming from, because Lynch's, the lyrics are just literally him narrating the events that you see in the video, which is just like a series of increasingly gross and chaotic behaviors in a backyard bonfire. But once you get to that chorus and he keeps saying, "It was crazy clown time," and the shots of him looking super fucking cool in his sunglasses singing into the mic, you just can't help but love it if you're a Lynch fan, in my opinion. So that was like the pre-show preamble, and then the projectionist actually came down and read the quote, which was something that Lynch read before showings of the movie when it first came out. So in some of the press showings and premiere showings, he would come out beforehand and just read a short statement, which is a quote from, I think, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It's a quote from one of the Upanishads, I believe. It says, "We are like a spider who weaves a web and then moves along it. We are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives inside the dream." And the closing line is something like, "It is this way throughout the whole cosmos," or all beings in the universe experience this, or something like that. And then they actually had a music act. A guitarist and a cellist came out and played this Schubert song that would have originally been for piano and singer. So this is all to say that the presentation was a very cool part of it, and going to see it in the theater, it was of this cool little small indie theater, red curtains on the walls. So the look, the vibe, seeing it with other people, the sound system was good, seeing it on a big screen. I didn't watch it on my phone. David Lynch will be glad to know, because it's such a fucking sadness when you watch things on your phone. As far as the movie itself, whether having seen it several more times, and particularly anything in the remaster, made me think differently about it. I always thought from the first time I watched it that the three rabbits were kind of existing on some platonic ideal form, something like that. They were on a deeper level than just everyday reality, of course, but also some kind of causal plane or some kind of platonic ideal plane, which is why their motions are so stylized, why they stand always in geometric arrangements, move at right angles. Everything they do is very deliberate and kind of abstracted. This time around, I thought of a particular mythic resonance. To me, the three rabbits kind of were acting as the three Norns, or the Fates, if you want to go to Norse or Greek mythology. In other words, those are the beings that weave the tapestry of reality. So I saw the rabbits as kind of somehow causing the events that we see in Sue's life. I'm going to choose to call Laura Dern's character Sue, because I actually think that Sue is the real, the more of the real character. Like, if you want to go comparable to Mulholland Drive, the Diane-Betty duality. Most people would agree that Betty is the dream projection and that Diane is the real thing. In the order that the story is told in the movie, what we get is the idea that Nikki Grace is an actress and that Sue is the character she plays. But when you see it a few more times and you're able to hold more of it in your mind, including knowing what's going to happen later, I thought it was kind of jumping out at me that actually Sue is the real kind of person living a life. And Nikki, the famous actress, is her fantasy projection. So I think that what we essentially have here is a story about Sue is making a decision whether or not to cheat on her husband. Then she does cheat on her husband and deal with the consequences. But her way of processing this is to project herself onto this fantasy realm where she's a star and she's a Hollywood star. I don't even necessarily think we're necessarily supposed to take it that she's literally dreaming she's in a movie production, but that is all an abstracted or symbolic representation of how she's casting herself in this romantic archetypal drama that she thinks she's participating in by kind of like taking a new lover. So she's raising this act of sleeping with this new guy onto this plane of like, ooh, isn't it salacious? Isn't it glamorous? Isn't it Hollywood? And so she casts herself as a movie starlet. She casts him as this kind of irascible bad boy co-star, and she plays out this love affair, which in reality we may never actually see the actual congress between the two of them, which may or may not have been just as squalid as everything else in Sue's life. But she projects it up onto this romanticized, very glamorized plane of reality. So what we begin with is her projection, and she's so deep in it, she's kind of like, one of the key lines in the movie that it comes in the soundtrack is "Strange what love does." Strange what love does. And so strange what love does. And so what's happening is this attraction, this romantic, the libido kind of inertia that's leading her towards sleeping with the Justin Theroux character has got her trapped. And because she's acting on these urges that come down from the mythic level, from the archetypal level, from the Hollywood, to the extent that that's the mythic level of our current civilization, she's also trapped in the inertia of that. She is kind of unable to escape the cycle. And what we watch is a movie of her traveling up and down the levels of her consciousness, as well as transiting back and forth between other historical enactments of this same archetypal action of the unfaithfulness to the jealous husband. And the whole movie is a journey of her up through these levels to kind of escape the fate that is owed to her, and to kind of break this cycle. So this time around watching it, I actually viewed visitor number one, which is Grace Zabriskie's character, the Eastern European neighbor who shows up at the beginning. I viewed her as like the good witch. Like she's actually coming in to warn, to awaken the sleeper from her dream, kind of, again, inertia is the word I would use. And she is planting the seed that will begin to fray the illusion of the dream and allow some kind of transcendence. So yes, I'm also viewing this through kind of a Hindu mysticism lens, which is very much in line with David-Lynch's beliefs and in line with the opening of this opening quote that he read and that they read last night. We are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives inside the dream. This is a cosmic statement about what we call Maya in Hindu thought. The idea that the world is a reality woven from consciousness, and that we are also the consciousness on a deep level of our being. We're the consciousness that weaves that reality, because we are identical with the consciousness that brings forth the whole universe. And so Sue has to realize this about herself, climb up through these levels of pulling away the trauma, the historical trauma, the gender violence that is kind of ruling in a mechanistic way, again, coming down from this plane of the rabbits, this cycle that she finds herself caught in of pain, violence, betrayal, blah, 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 blah. And you'll notice the good visitor number one comes back at the end of the movie. At the moment, after, well, of course I can't remember the exact order of events, but after the lost girl and Nikki or Sue are reunited in that, towards the end of that final scene, we see the visitor number one smiling, and it looks like a benevolent smile, like she did. The warning was heeded. Now, I'm not saying the warning was heeded and then Sue immediately took the advice and staved off disaster, but the warning planted this seed that echoed up and down through these levels of consciousness, backward and forward in time through these overlapping layers of reality, and eventually on the other side of this long kind of whirlpool of entrappedness, that seed takes fruit in the redemption that happens when Nikki goes and meets the lost girl. So, you know, is Sue the real thing? Is Nikki the real thing? Is the lost girl the real person in the story? The question is meaningless. They're all tied up together in this cyclic, mythic, archetypal reenactment. There's no real and no less real, really. And so the lost girl is some level of this archetypal cheating wife who, thanks to the spiritual work and spiritual kind of battle that Sue does, whether we think of it in her own real life or in On High and Blue Tomorrows, the film that's being made, the lost girl is freed from this kind of karmic cycle, if you will. Is it a happy ending that she's reunited with her abusive husband? We assume it's the abusive husband because it's the same actor that plays Piotrek and Smithy. You know, I don't know if the moral depths or the kind of Protestant ethics that might be embodied in that ending. You know, there's some school of thought that definitely says David-Lynch has a kind of Protestant redemption ethics that we could definitely tease apart as problematic. Happened at the end of Fire Walk with Me. The couple other thoughts. I was getting a lot of traction as I was watching by thinking of the possibility that lodge entities are present in each scene. So maybe a force that's trying to pull Sue or Nikki downward back into the cycle as she's kind of struggling upward to get out of it. So I thought, what if I was to assume that there was a lodge entity in every scene? Who would it be? By lodge entity, I'm talking about the Twin Peaks mythos, where there are these lodges of supernatural, or transdimensional entities that are kind of playing with the reality. One character that really jumped out at me as being like a lodge entity is Harry Dean Stanton's character. He, in some ways, parallels the gangsters, or like Mr. Roke from Mulholland Drive, but pulling the levers behind the scenes. And the reason I say that is there's a scene where we're watching a production moment in On High and Blue Tomorrows, and we see Sue and Billy do a scene. Then we cut over to Kingsley, the director, and Harry Dean Stanton's character, which is Freddie. And Kingsley looks at Freddie for approval. I never noticed this before, but Kingsley looks to Freddie for approval before he says they can wrap the scene. And Freddie's the one that says, yeah, we got it. So he kind of reminds me of those "This Is the Girl" gangsters, even though he's, now what does it mean that this guy is not self-solvent and has to ask for money for his rent and all that kind of stuff? That kind of confuses that interpretation. But again, much the way the lodge entities live on Garmin Bozia, they're kind of vampiric or parasitic entities. So I think him asking for money is also a instantiation of him being a parasitic entity that can't really hold up his own life force without needing to kind of leech off of others. But meanwhile, he has all this power to control events as they unfold. So trying to put together other thoughts that flitted through my mind to kind of complete and put a button on this. Obviously, this is not a organized, well thought out, thesis-driven analysis. It's a kind of off-the-cuff jumble of ideas, but they do somehow fit together in my interpretation, even if I'm not making that interpretation explicit as I talk here. All the events of the first half of the movie before Sue and Justin Theroux end up hooking up, I think can be seen as these parts of her psyche talking her into doing this thing. Kingsley, Jeremy Irons' character, very much strikes me this way, that he's kind of coaxing and cajoling her, and flattering her, and raising up her self-importance as an adjunct, almost as an agent of Justin Theroux's character in her own mind, telling her what a good actress she is and what a role this is going to be of a lifetime. And this is kind of her talking herself into the role of adulterer. So the long middle section, where of course we're just seeing kind of this echoing through the timelines of her suffering and the danger and violence that she's put herself in through this. That's what is going on in the Polish scenes, and we're seeing her interact with her historical resonances in this story, Für Sieben, Axon N, and we're also seeing her interact with parts of her own mind. The prostitutes I've always taken as some part of Nikki's psychology that is dealing with her baggage of living in a patriarchal society, that's dealing with her experiences of gendered violence, and they're kind of standing in for her experience under the male gaze, which is very much a theme of this whole movie, is women under the male gaze. So I think that's the role that they're playing. And then as far as the ending segment with the dancing from Sinnerman, I do see it as a happy ending, much like the ending of Fire Walk with Me, but told in a different emotional register, or different kind of style register. This big dance party is, yes, finally the cycle has been broken, some kind of liberation has been achieved, and it's echoing back and forth through the different fictions of David-Lynch. That's why Laura Herring is there. She's been kind of freed by this triumph of Nikki or Sue at the end, this redemption, again, where she's reunited with the lost girl. But also just all these other women are just able to be joyful and celebrate because Sue, the spiritual warrior, has kind of achieved some kind of victory. I think a big part of that victory is also her murdering the Phantom. The Phantom is obviously not just a lodge entity, but maybe something more on the lines of the man inside the planet in Eraserhead, this kind of agent of fate who is making this all kind of inescapably occur. And so she shoots him, but of course, again, in line with this Hindu theology, when she shoots him, who did she really shoot? her face gets plastered on him, right? She had to go deep, deep within, down to a far deep level of her consciousness, which is where room 47 is. And she had to do spiritual battle with the final boss, which looks like this scary Polish guy, but is of course herself, her own kind of ego, or whatever you want to, whatever her own karmic engine or whatever part of her is trapping her in this cycle. So she goes down there and she does spiritual warfare, and she shoots herself, and then boom, 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 up through the levels. This action percolates until we get Nikki and the Lost Girl kissing. We get the Lost Girl reunited with her family, and then we get this celebratory dance party under the final credits. So I guess I'll wrap it there. 24 minutes is plenty. I'm sure it could have been way more eloquent and organized. Like I said, this is a reality of how I can even spend time on this analysis given how busy my life is right now. So hope you enjoyed. Get at me with your thoughts in the comments of anything that you think I got right, anything you think I missed, any connections that are worth making, whether you enjoyed the video. I'll put a link to my original Inland Empire snap analysis with my friend Henrik, who talked about it with me after my very first time viewing the movie. We did a Zoom recording, and that is up here on my channel as well. Again, not produced, not organized. Yeah, thanks for listening along. Hope you enjoyed. Bye. Oh, a couple more things that I wanted to mention. One, the ritual where she burns through the panties with the cigarette. That's a key escape route for her. When she burns through the fabric, that's where she also is able to burn through these levels of reality, and that's her kind of escape route from this cycle. So it's very important that the Lost Girl teaches her that. Also, the 9:45 midnight thing. My interpretation of that this time around was that that's where where some of the levels intersect, as far as like where they're in contact with each other, or where the timelines kind of, I don't know, cross each other isn't the right word, but touch each other. So where it's after midnight in Poland on that particular day of those events is equivalent to the times where it's said to be 9:45. I don't know if there's that much depth of the explanatory power there, but that's what the Good Witch, the first visitor, means by, I suppose if it was 9:45, I'd think it was after midnight. And that is like a clue that lets Nikki, again, traverse these levels and unravel the historical trauma. And one last detail, so now I'm gonna have to splice together 3 videos. One last thing I wanted to report on that I thought people would find interesting is that I did go with a friend, and for him it was his first time seeing the film, and so I just wanted to share a few things that he said, because it's always fun to hear from first-time viewers of a piece like that. I don't know that he was necessarily a fan. I could tell he was frustrated by the inability to understand the story. Obviously, everything I've said in this video so far, where I had some interpretation of the story, is based on seeing it 3 or 4 times. So I think we all remember the first time we ever saw this movie, and for sure, it's very perplexingly incomprehensible. So he definitely expressed that. And also, you would have to say the movie, and probably it benefited in this regard from the remaster, it is successful at disturbing you. It is very off-putting, and what he said was, and I didn't quite see this when we were in the movie theater together, but what he said was that a good portion of the time, he said like 50% of the time in the second half of the movie, he was not looking at the screen. And not just because of the actual gore or the jump scares or those parts where where it's purposefully kind of disturbing, but the whole look and feel of the movie is very nauseating. All those close-ups, he said it was like, I thought this was a good phrase, because when you're close up on that quasi-wide angle lens, things keep morphing and shifting. people's faces keep changing shape, and he said it was like watching a 3-hour optical illusion, which is very true. Something about the camera work and the cinematography in that movie kind of makes you queasy and makes you question what you're seeing the entire time. He was, ultimately, I think he came down on the side of being into it. He's like, I'm interested in the weird film thing. I think it's exciting. I think it's interesting. But his take after one viewing was that maybe this is a little over the line for his tastes. And I said, well, you know, the movie does hold together more and make more sense if you see it more times. And his answer was, yeah, but I don't know if I have the stomach to see it more times, which again, I think is fair. He also said he thinks it's the weirdest movie he's ever seen. And after he said that, he said, yeah, I don't think I know even anything that comes close. Like, he's like, I can't even think of a good runner-up. So, yeah, that was his review on the drive home, and I thought I'd share that with you too, just because it's an interesting piece of data about this movie that we all, I assume if you're watching this like me, are so entranced by and confused by, and somebody like me, keep coming back to. That first time experience is always an interesting anecdote. Okay, so now the real final sign off of this video. Thanks, and hope you enjoyed.